Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, this story begins when I started my big OE, which to those who are not Kiwis would know is the big overseas experience. If you've made some kind of a trail for yourself in New Zealand, you have to test yourself against the rest of the world. And that's what I set out to do, age 21. I arrived in Sydney and I was very fortunate to get a job quite quickly. And then I had my first week's pay packet. I headed straight for David Jones department store. I'd never seen anything quite like David Jones department store before. So I headed in, and before I knew it, I was looking through the glass at my best friend for the next 20, 30, 40 years. Now, we left David Jones together and we travelled around the world together, my friend and I. We often shared the same pillow, and it was when we got to Germany together, went to Berlin, because I was travelling on a New Zealand passport, I wanted to go through to the east to see what it was like on the east side of Germany. So I went through Checkpoint Charlie, and the people who were monitoring all of that stuff, they absconded with my copy of Time magazine and also the American newspaper of the day. I've forgotten what it was for the moment. But anyway, while I was in the east side, and I'm looking down this long grey row of houses, and they all looked like they'd been punched out by a cookie cutter. They were tall, 6 stories, and they went on for at least 2 or 3 miles of the same style of house. So that's the sort of architecture that was happening on the east side of Germany back in those days. Oh, it was the US Herald Tribune is the newspaper I was trying to think of. They absconded with that, wasn't allowed to take it into the west, into the east. Unfortunately, a young man called Peter Fechter, aged 18, he was an 18-year-old block layer, and he was helping to build the Berlin Wall at that stage. But he didn't want to live in the east, he wanted to live in the west, and at one point he made a dash for the fence, which was still being partially built. It was still barbed wire in those days, not all concrete blocks. And he clambered up the barbed wire until he got to the top, and then the guns rang out and they shot him dead and left him to hang on the wire for 3 days. That was a warning to others not to follow the path of Peter Fechter. When I finally got back into the West, there were so many flowers as a tribute on the space where Peter Fechter had been killed on the wire. Not as many as Princess Diana, but certainly a lot of people who showed that they respected his effort to live free rather than under communism. My friend and I travelled around, and my friend taught me how to find out what's going on. And I found out in 1962 that Marilyn Monroe had died, aged 46. And that was a great sadness for people. You know, young blokes, Marilyn Monroe was pretty special. But to find out that she had died, my friend told me all about that. And I also found out from my friend about the first of the James Bond movies called Dr. No. And this of course goes on, and as you're travelling around you do find out these sort of things. I also, my friend told me about John Glenn getting up into space and circulating around the Earth 3 times. Of course, John Glenn came home to America later on and became a politician. 1963, I was listening to President John Kennedy giving his speech in Berlin. That's the one where he says, "Ich bin ein Berliner." And my friend shared all this information with me. And so I was able to pick up on a lot of this information. I happened to be in America when John F. Kennedy was shot dead. And I can still remember Walter Cronkite saying, "We interrupt this news bulletin to bring you the sad news that the president is dead." That was all the sort of news that a young bloke, I'd never had any experience of all of that. So I was very thankful that my friend was able to share it with me. Come 1964, and the Beatles were invited to go from Liverpool across to America, and they appeared on the Ed Sullivan Show. Now, America had never come across anything quite as exciting as the Beatles. This was the beginning of their rocket rise to fame in the world. But then other things happened. I was working in London when Sir Winston Churchill died, and I managed to get time off from my work to go and stand in the roadside as his cortege goes up to St. Paul's Cathedral and recognise his contribution to the world. So a lot of that sort of thing was going on in my lifetime, perhaps in the lifetime of some of you. But it was through my friend that I was able to get all this information. So my friend and I have been unparted for all those years, and my friend and I are still unparted, really. So it's not without some special memories of my friend who died but shared so much information with me on my radio. Thank you for listening.